Every day when a man wakes up, he has to hit the slime bag 50,000 times, but it turns out that it's such an ordinary exercise. 2 years later, he jumped from the weakest F rank to possess the S rank combat power. The powerful flying dragon is like a toy to him. He can throw it into the atmosphere at will, but he has been practicing without ever going down the mountain. His few monster masters have never praised his strength. This also led him to always think that he was weak. But just on this day, knowing that the E rank adventurer upgrade exam is about to start, the protagonist finally had the opportunity to go down the mountain. At this time, he remembered that he was still an F rank adventurer. This exam is undoubtedly a good opportunity to test his practice results, but I didn't expect to just arrive at the guild. The front desk lady recognized him at a glance. It turns out that they were colleagues 2 years ago. When she heard that the protagonist resigned, she was very surprised when she decided to change her job to be an adventurer. After all, in this world where it is natural to become an adventurer in your teens, the protagonist finally made this decision at the age of 30. He resolutely gave up his past decade of work at the counter, and unknowingly, 2 years have passed. Just as he wanted to inquire about what the protagonist had experienced during this period. I didn't want a drunkard to come over and harass at this time. Let her not care about what work. Isn't it good to come over and be happy together? Seeing this scene, the protagonist also hurried to help. While persuading him to calm down first, he also inadvertently put his hand on his stomach. This kind of trouble is already commonplace for the protagonist who used to work in the guild, but what he didn't expect was that as soon as the voice fell, the drunkard suddenly fainted. Suddenly it caused a lot of onlookers, but thinking that the drunkard drank too much, he didn't think much about it. But it was at this time that the front desk remembered that the admission ticket had not been given to the protagonist. After telling him to cheer for the E rank exam, the protagonist also left here immediately, but actually just as he left, a palm print caused a sensation in the guild. You know, this is armor made of steel. They can't believe who has this ability. It was at this time that someone suddenly recognized the drunkard. It turned out to be a former A rank adventurer who was wanted for violent crimes, but others don't know. The front desk lady can see it clearly. She clearly remembers that when the protagonist was helping her just now, he slapped the drunkard's stomach with his hand, just as the front desk had a guess. At the same time, the protagonist has already arrived at the examination room. The first game is a test of magic level. Just put your hand on the crystal ball in front of you. You can know the other party's magic power based on the intensity of the light. Looking around, almost all the people in the field are C rank and D rank. Even the lower E rank is not there. But I didn't expect that when it was the protagonist's turn. I saw the crystal ball as if it had farted when he learned that his result was F. This also made everyone laugh. There is actually an F magic power in this world. This simply refreshed the kingdom's lowest record. But the next second, the crystal ball cracked. The second round is a test of attack power. All you have to do is exert all your strength on the slime bag in front of you. The degree of shaking can determine the examinee's attack power, because this slime bag has quite excellent shock absorption, so she let the candidates not be merciful. The protagonist naturally knows about the slime bag. In his cognition, the resistance of the golden slime is the highest, and the green slime is the lowest, but he has never hit a green slime. It was in the past 2 years that he only hit the golden slime. This is also the requirement of his master. The goal of training at that time was as long as he could destroy the golden slime. It is enough to represent the great success of his physical body. At that time, the other party let him keep hitting 50,000 times a day. Looking back now, the protagonist is still lingering, and at this time, the examiner also announced the start of the exam. The first candidate used enhancement magic to hit. The examiner's evaluation of him is not bad. The second one is a bit powerful. As soon as he appeared, he brought his own aura. It turns out that he is the rumored second son of the Diarmut family. Heard that when he was 11 years old, he has a magic power equivalent to C rank. In short, he is a genius, and at this time the exam also started. The blonde man used his big move as soon as he came up. His third nature composed magic, Flame Eliminate. This age can use third nature composed magic. This is something that everyone present cannot do. I didn't expect it to be so small. But this is not the blonde man's abnormal performance, but this is the power of third nature composed magic. Sure enough, he is a genius. Hearing the examiner's evaluation, this also made the protagonist doubt life clearly in his impression. The magic used by his master, but the power is comparable to a nuclear bomb. The gap between the two is not in the same dimension at all. She hit casually, can easily flatten a mountain. The same as flame magic. The power is too much difference. This also made the protagonist think that the blonde man was just not to hurt the examination room, so it is compressed into indoor use. Sure enough, he is a genius. And then after the continuous display of the candidates, this also made the protagonist more certain of his guess. It seems that even the green slime bag, the resistance to hitting is also very strong. Then it was finally the protagonist's turn, but I didn't expect to take only 2 steps. The examiner stopped him, and the reason is his age of 30, because according to common sense, magic power is something that is good to exercise when you are young. There will be no chance to grow later, and the protagonist's F test result also happened to prove this point. The reason for naming him specifically, it is also kind to persuade him to give up. In the examiner's view, the protagonist is not suitable to be an adventurer at all, and this sentence has always been the protagonist's pain. But how can you change your mind if you make up your mind? No one knows what he has experienced in the past 2 years, but he has survived it all. What if you start later than others? In his opinion, there is no difference at all. So in front of everyone, the protagonist blew up the green slime with a punch. The protagonist was stunned, just when he thought this slime bag was defective. This scene also stunned the blonde man. He didn't expect a 32-year-old uncle to steal his limelight, but after thinking about it, he let go of his heart. You know, what he is best at is defensive magic, and the next defense test is his home court. But this idea came quickly and went quickly. Wait until the exam starts. He found that the protagonist's defense power was also terrifyingly outrageous. If it weren't for seeing it with his own eyes, he could not imagine that the protagonist could block the examiner's fourth nature composed magic with only F magic level. In order to better test the protagonist's magic level, the examiner also prepared to use his strongest fifth nature composed magic. At the same time, this scene happened to be seen by the first-rank knight of the Royal Knights. Immediately he rushed to the examination room. Ask the examiner what happened here. This is not a loud noise that can be produced by an E-rank exam, and knowing that this was only done by an F-rank adventurer, just when he was a little confused. At this time, the protagonist has already finished the written exam, but only this game he didn't worry at all. After all, the previous clerk's 10 years were not in vain. He is confident that he can get full marks, and sitting next to him at this time is one of his masters. In order to see the protagonist's performance, she had to come in person, but before the two of them had a chat, suddenly the blonde man just now came over. He scolded the protagonist for stealing his limelight in the exam just now. Originally, he planned to show off in this exam, but now everything has been destroyed by the protagonist. Saying that, tears appeared in the corners of his eyes, thinking that his younger brother was made to cry by the protagonist. This also made the blonde man's big sister Angelica furious. She immediately arrogantly proposed to duel with the protagonist. She is going to avenge her good younger brother. The protagonist originally did not plan to accept, but seeing the other party throwing over the gloves, the protagonist also didn't know the rules of the duel, subconsciously picked up the gloves on the ground. What he didn't know was that this action meant that he accepted the challenge, so the duel was officially established. Angelica demanded that whoever lost must be the winner's servant until death. As a second-class knight of the Royal Knights, she is confident of winning. If converted into adventurer level, then he is B rank. Hearing this, the protagonist panicked instantly. At this time, he still thought he was only F rank, but for the protagonist's worries, Rionette asked him to recall his 2 years of practice. As soon as these words came out, a nightmare-like memory also emerged in the protagonist's mind. Thinking of this, he suddenly wanted to vomit. But because of this, Rionette also told the protagonist whether he was no longer nervous. As a member of the strongest team on the continent, how can such a small thing stump the protagonist? Sure enough, the moment he heard this, the protagonist's heart gradually calmed down, although he doesn't know what he can do now. But he had the courage to fight Angelica, and then the fight was about to start. After expressing that she would spare the protagonist's life, Angelica also warned the protagonist to be careful of her speed. In this respect, she is not inferior to A rank. In an instant, she appeared behind the protagonist. It's not that the protagonist dodged, but as a greeting, Angelica deliberately missed. Seeing the protagonist not knowing what happened, this also made the blonde man next to him very happy. He thought the protagonist was scared by big sister's speed. You know, his big sister is known as Lightspeed Angelica. She is the fastest woman in B rank, and seeing that his goal has been achieved, Angelica also told herself that the next hit will not be biased, after decisively using Blink Step again. But what she didn't know was that in the protagonist's vision, her extremely fast speed is like a turtle. The protagonist even felt that he was not as fast as his own walking, so he easily dodged this attack. This made Angelica think that the protagonist was just lucky. Then she immediately used Blink Step again. Seeing this, the protagonist was stupid again. Both actions are so slow, then it can't be said to be a coincidence. If you say that this level can be a second-class knight, then he can change him up. Just when the protagonist thought he might be very strong, Angelica didn't notice the ground, after being tripped by a clod of soil. On the contrary, under its blessing, let Angelica's moves become stronger. When the protagonist looked over again, he couldn't see clearly, under this extremely fast attack speed. This also made the protagonist's previous thoughts dissipate. It turns out that this is the real level of the second-class knight. He couldn't predict the other's actions at all. Just now he thought he was very strong. It's too ridiculous. And Angelica praised the protagonist on the surface for being able to dodge this kind of attack. And since this is the case, it is enough to show that it is worth her full effort. Then she also warned the protagonist to be careful. Her next move, Blink Step Loda, because of the heavy burden on the body, it can only be used 3 times, although it is also a high-speed movement technique. But the difference is that this time it is 3 times faster than just now, because the body can't bear it. Even she can only use it 3 times. However, in the protagonist's view, although the other party is indeed 3 times faster, but this action is still very slow. He easily dodged 2 attacks, but thinking that this will go on endlessly, so he prepared to start counterattacking. Unfortunately, Angelica tripped again. Suddenly the protagonist punched the ground, when the smoke dissipated. This also made Angelica a little scared. If she hadn't tripped, obviously the big pit on the ground would be her end. After understanding that the protagonist is very strong, then she would be a fool to continue fighting. After expressing that this time is considered as the protagonist wins, then she also turned and left. But the protagonist did not forget their bet. Remember, Angelica said, the loser has to be the winner's servant for life, but she obviously doesn't plan to fulfill the agreement. Just ran away directly. Just as the protagonist was stunned, Rionette told him not to worry about Angelica first, but the person who should worry now is himself. You know, the exam results are about to come out. When he left, at that time, his other few masters said they would come to watch, and now, they are probably already on the way. It was at this time that the protagonist suddenly remembered that he had forgotten about this. He knows the horror of the masters best. What if the exam results come out? What if he knows he failed?